Hello, everyone. I'm Keith Stone, your host for HeroesX Office Hours. I'm here again with Greg Nagy and Sarah and John Alen. And today we're talking about the discussion questions for hours 5 and 6. And I'll start with reading the question for hour 5. In hour 5 of H24H, it took me, Greg, twice as long to say what I wanted to say compared to the average length of the other chapters or hours. Sometimes I, Greg, ask myself, was it worth it? But I ask the question differently here. Do you think that reading the songs of Sappho make a difference in your overall view of Achilles?
A different kind of question.
So what did folks say about this one?
Well, there was a comment about Sappho and Achilles, and the comment was, could Sappho have had a special place in her heart for Achilles, since his attraction to the women of Lesbos comes up at least twice in the Iliad, and especially at the end of book scroll 9.
Beautiful.
He sleeps in an inner room, and beside him the daughter of Phobos, lovely Diomede, whom he had carried off from Lesbos. So she's wondering, the participant is wondering if there's a connection between Lesbos and Achilles, even in the Iliad.
Yes, it's true that there, I think, lots of traces of a special relationship of Achilles with the women's song tradition of Lesbos, and therefore any love song traditions that go with it. And the love songs, of course, usually have to do with unrequited love of, for example, a situation where an unmarried girl falls madly in love with Achilles, and then there's some terrible disappointment, usually leading to death. And this is all very much part of traditional song culture, where even wedding songs that are happy occasions are given to commemorating moments of larger than life disappointment in love. Perfectly okay, anthropologically speaking. So that was a lovely reaction. And I read between the lines that our participant understands that what I'm trying to do is defamiliarize the Iliad and get people away from assuming this is entertainment for men, by men, about men's experiences in war. It's so much more.
One of the participants said, but through songs of Sappho, I understood the tender poignancy in Greek culture. And going from there, is Sappho using multi-lenses, looking at Achilles?
Yes, because after all, the medium of Sappho is usually, maybe exclusively lyric. And I'm using the word lyric in the broadest sense possible, whereas the medium of Achilles, as we experience it in the Iliad, is definitely not lyric, it's epic. So there already you have different registers, and the artistry of Sappho, and for that matter, any verbal art that is called lyric can interweave with the verbal art of epic. So there are no hard and fast lines, but that would mean that there are different perspectives.
So another comment or thoughts that have been coming up are thinking about the role of a bridegroom, and how a bridegroom and bride and groom morph into gods, as it were, during the ritual of marriage. And also then that the heroes, when they're fighting, sometimes become or described as equal to a god or equal to a daimon, and whether that there is a connection there between that becoming godlike.
Oh, I think so. When I was young, a very popular song, I think performed mostly by the Kingston Trio, that dates me, was "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" And it was based on a Russian folk song about the not just thousands, but millions of young men who perished in war in the recent history of Russia. The idea of the bridegroom who never got to be a bridegroom, the potential bridegroom who never got to be a bridegroom because of war, is just all pervasive in so many song cultures. After all, it was a fact of life in the ancient Greek world that a lot of young men, eligible young men, would die in war before they ever got married. And so I think the idea of equating the bridegroom to a god, like even Ares himself, is much more expected in the ancient world than it may be today. And so the parallelism of a warrior's climactic moment, death and war, that parallelism with a bridegroom's becoming equal to a god at a wedding is not so much a matter of very different worlds. The worlds converge all too sadly. And I might say with women, the death rate in giving birth is horrific as we look back at the meager evidence, but even the meager evidence says that young people were very acquainted with death in the flower of youth, much more so than today, I think. But all this suggests that people did like to see Sappho introduced.
Oh, yes. A lot of people have commented on how much they have enjoyed it, and elsewhere in the forum as well, they've been commenting how much they've enjoyed the poetry of Sappho.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad of that, Sarah. And as you four colleagues all know, I've had many frustrations with people who just don't like Achilles.
Well, they're not necessarily completely like Achilles, but they're understanding a lot more why the ancient Greeks did. I think that would be the takeaway from a lot of the comments.
Well, Sappho liked Achilles. That's pretty good cred.
Yeah, and they also like the mention of the sweet apple.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, beautiful. Oh my God.
Okay, let me read.
All right, we push ahead.
The other question here for hour 6. This is again written from the point of view of Gregory Nagy. Am I, Greg, using the word therapeutic accurately enough if I say that the experience of identifying with others is therapeutic? To ask the same question in another way, does the use of the word therapeutic in English correspond accurately enough to the meanings of ancient Greek therapōn, therapūein? If you are more fluent in another language than English, does that language have a word like therapeutic? And if so, how does it correspond to the meanings of ancient Greek therapōn, therapūein?
Well, there's one mention of Latin. There is the participant notes that there is curiatonis and administrator, which have the idea of care and helper.
Yes.
Effectively.
Yes. Yes, I think you're so right, Iliad. The fact that no modern language really can connect with the ancient Greek usage of taking very good care of sacred objects. And that fact, that kind of missing link, makes my question maybe too difficult, because I don't think we are going to get too many insights by way of how these ancient Greek words, therapeuo, therapeuin, and therapōn, how they're reflected in modernity. Because in modernity, it's basically finding a cure. But I've heard physicians say, my own PCP once said very proudly about how he cares for his patients. And I think physicians can say that. And once you get into that, then you are getting close to the ancient meaning, where there's a strong component of an awareness of the sacred.
One of the participants pointed out the ancient meaning of therapōn and the ritualistic side of therapy, and the regularity in the ritual. Participants know and they know what to expect.
Yes.
And in that sense, the inner life and outer life comes together, and
Nice.
and care is given. And this way, the modern way understanding of therapy maybe carries the meaning into the modern world.
I love the expression, care is given. Yes, there is caring. And it's not just, when we say technically dental care, medical care, but really caring. Yeah, I think that helps me. And so there are some idioms, even in today's medical language, where the idea of caring comes through. And certainly my PCP, principal, what is it?
Principal care provider.
Principal care provider, there it is.
Built
wow.
Right.
Well, we shouldn't use abbreviations. My PCP was right.
So Greg, one of the things I wanted to pick up on, which has come up both in this thread and elsewhere on the forum, is how the word has perhaps changed in meaning over time in Greek. So we know this is not a Greek word originally, it was a loan word.
Correct.
Where it did specifically mean something like a ritual substitute.
Yes.
But I was wondering then, by the time we get certainly to the Odyssey and to the time when the versions of the Iliad and Odyssey that we now have were being performed in the Panathenaeus, say in the 5th century BCE,
Yeah.
the word had much more of a meaning of maybe a household servant.
Yeah.
So in the Iliad, are we seeing some sort of transitional time? Did the audience still have the understanding of it maybe at the time the poems were being composed, maybe 8th century BCE, but would that audience have understood that ritual substitute sense, or would they have seen it in a different sense?
Well, if I could be subjective and guess on a scale of 0 to 10, I would say that the old Anatolian meaning of ritual substitute is still there, maybe 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10, but that's good enough, because when you look at the relationship of Achilles and Patroclus, he is definitely the #1 therapōn of Achilles. And even if you say, well, that's because he does secondary things while Achilles does primary things, even when you're hosting people at a meal. Achilles will be the one who actually divides the meat, and Patroclus will do everything else as a co-host. Or for that matter, Patroclus is the official charioteer of Achilles, although we never see them on a chariot together in the Iliad, but that is his role, and that's understood in the Iliad. So maybe again, I'm pushing myself, is just as the listeners of the Iliad in the ancient world might be as vague as I am when I say PCP, it's still there. The message is still there that there's mutual care for each other. And that caring even reaches the point where the therapōn is ready to take the hit for his partner. And that certainly happens in charioteering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we maybe need to look at other pairings to get a more of an understanding. So it's not the case that Achilles deliberately sent him out as a ritual substitute. That wasn't in his mind at all, was it?
No.
And we know he says, you know, don't overdo it, don't go too far.
Well,
but the fact that he's wearing his very armor, there is something there at the back of our minds that's saying there's something going on here.
I love that, Sarah, because similarly, when Achilles is listening to the story of Phoenix about Menelaus and Cleopatra, he doesn't fully get it yet. The older I get, the more I see that in 9, he still doesn't get it. He only gets it in 19.
So I was looking at the Odyssey, and some of our participants have now started reading the Odyssey, and I've been doing quite a bit of work on it. So I went to look to see where the word was used in the Odyssey, and there it is. It seems to be in a much more domestic setting. We see them doing things like dividing the meat and so on at feasts, or carrying armor or something like that. It does seem to have be a lot more downplayed. We don't see any of that sort of substitution thing going on. But I wanted to pick on something you said earlier, that they would take good care of sacred objects. And so we might need to think, for all the suitors might be thinking of a feast as, you know, just plenty to eat and drink.
Sure.
It was still a ritualized activity, and that sacrifice of an animal had to be made. So is there some sort of loose connection that it's not got watered down exactly, but it's shifted focus by that stage?
Well, certainly anything the suitors do is almost a negative example of how not to behave, even in a non-sacred or a modified sacred setting. So I totally agree with you. But it is a fact that by the time we got into the 5th century, on a scale again of 0 to 10, I'd say the idea of ritual substitute hovers between 1 and 0. So it is definitely on the way out. And you can understand that because of the more superficial aspects of what it is to be a therapōn. And I might have misled you. In the Iliad, it's Achilles who divides the meat. Patroclus does everything else. It's like hand out the bread from a basket. Go figure. So always secondary. And you can understand how a charioteer would be secondary to a chariot fighter, who's the one who actually jumps off the chariot and fights the enemy. But
you can't have the one without the other. And the chariot driver has to be aware of at all times of where the fighter is.
But then the weird thing is, okay, so therapōn, that noun pretty much becomes assistant or something in the 5th century. But the verb therapeuo now becomes almost entirely medical, except in sacred contexts. And I go back to the idea that even in the 5th century, there are attestations of therapeuo, meaning, hello, I take care of sacred things, like I polish the statues in the temple. I'm misleading when I say polish, but you get the idea.
So it's taking care of sacred objects, awareness of the sacred, but also that therapeutic, as we're talking about. And I think even Patroclus is able to do that. We see him taking care of an injured person before he comes back to Achilles, and he learned it from Achilles himself.
True. He is therapeutic. He can cure wounds. Yes.
And they learn it from Chiron.
Very good point. Yeah, very good point. And yet, isn't it interesting, Sarah, that when he does that, it's not that the verb therapeuo is used, it's just that he does it. and he's a therapōn. But you see what I'm saying? It's not that already there's a neat division in the Iliad where therapeo is, I take care of a patient. No.
Well, we're about out of time. Anything else we should address before we? Okay.
Well, I just love the thoughts that the participants give, and then how we manage to encounter them and sometimes address the problem, sometimes fail to address it in my case. But it's such an adventure in reading. I just love, I love both the successes and the not so successes.
As long as you keep reading.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep reading, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, you all. See you next time.
Till the next time.